Hello and welcome to our webinar series on GSC AML CFT inspections. This video will cover customer due diligence, but instead of focusing on the code requirements, we're going to look at how to effectively demonstrate you are meeting them. We're going to cover the following topics in this bite-sized webinar. 1. Identification. 2. Verification. And also have a quick look at transferring a block of business. Let's get into it. Identification. It's important to understand if your customer is a natural person, someone acting by way of business, a PEP, or a higher risk customer. Upon determining that, you must then apply the relevant identity checks and, where necessary, verification or CDD measures to that customer relationship. Ahead of the on-site inspection, the GSC will review your policies and procedures on identification and verification to see if they meet the code requirements. On-site, our inspectors will not only check if you're complying with the code and practice, but also ensure that you're following your own policies and procedures. Have a think about what the inspectors are looking for when testing the identity requirements and compare them to your own procedures. Pre-visit sampling will evidence that the right information is being collated at registration for new customers. The on-site inspection is looking for evidence that supports your compliance. If the pre-visit sample identifies gaps, the inspectorate will assess the materiality of risk, how widespread the failures may be, and what remediation plans are in place. The team will be interested in any customers that may look like they're acting by way of business. For instance, they're using a business email or payment method, and will test your own processes and procedures to see if they are effective and if there are any gaps in identification information. Here are some examples of things that you could use to demonstrate your effectiveness. We're looking for examples of information held for customers who are legal entities or acting by way of business, demonstrating that the correct information has been collated for them. You must ensure you demonstrate the automated or documented processes and reviews that are taking place. That could indicate a customer is acting by way of business, which has prompted further investigation. Have you conducted reviews on registration information, looking for information that's missing, duplicate, or anonymous information? We're looking for evidence of this. What have you done to flag incomplete information and prevented further activity? A good practice tip: please consider carrying out partial verification before the threshold. This could be on a risk-based approach, undertaken through open source or through third-party applications. It's completely up to you how you do this, but it's seen as good practice. Full verification. Sampling is an important part of our inspection checks, and we will expect to see verification documents held for customers that have met the €3,000 threshold for deposits or withdrawals. The team will look to select a number of customers to sample ahead of the inspection from a data sample list. It's important that your records are up to date for all customers and ready to be submitted without undue delay. Again, the team will be familiar with your processes and procedures and will also check that they are understood, up to date, and being put into practice ahead of the inspection. Full verification requires independently sourced documents. The code and AML CFT guidance outlines examples of documents that can be submitted by the customer. During an on-site inspection, the team will be interested in documents that are in date and align with your internal policy and procedures for verification. If you only accept a certain type of proof of address, but there's an example of where you've strayed from your own policy, clearly document why. If you have examples of where you have discovered a fake document, please demonstrate this to the inspectorate and include a timeline of events. The inspectors will be interested in how documents are assessed for validity. If this is automated or manual, and if manual, how staff are trained and resourced to do those checks. We'll also be interested in how quickly documents were provided when the threshold was reached. and what type of activity took place on the account during that period. If CDD was refused, how that was dealt with and how fast you've acted. Good practice tip. Back office notes. Back office notes are important in assessing the timeline of requests for CDD and can be used to evidence consideration. Often operators perform open source checks on information received and may not document this. Please encourage staff to get into the habit of documenting their checks and updating back office records to make sure you can clearly demonstrate the steps taken. If you're doing the job, please evidence this. Transfer of a block of business. If you're a licence holder starting up with an existing customer base or taking on a new block of business, there should be a plan in place with the GSC to ensure that CDD is up to the same standards as expected under the code set within a timeframe. The inspections team will look to ensure this plan has been followed. Best practice in this area would be to have clear documents or evidence showing how CDD has been checked and how it now complies with the code. By the time the inspection takes place, there should be no deficiencies in CDD. Where any deficiencies in CDD still exist or are identified in the inspection, we will focus on how these are being addressed and how this aligns with the risk-based approach. A good practice tip. Try and use as much information as possible to assess if the customer's risk assessment is accurate and the CDD held is proportionate with the activity and risk profile of the customer. For a large transfer, it won't always be possible to do this in such a short time. So use a risk-based approach to identify and target higher risk customers for initial review. A final word from me, and this is to stress how important it is to document the steps you take to carry out identification and full verification. Inspections are an important tool in testing that your framework is fit for purpose and that staff understand and they apply it. Where you can clearly demonstrate decision-making, clear rationales, and that reasonable steps were taken, then an inspection outcome is more likely to be favourable. By ensuring that CDD measures are not only applied consistently, but also documented thoroughly, we can prevent bad actors from exploiting gambling for illegal purposes. CDD serves a fundamental part of the strategy to maintain the integrity of the gambling sector and prevent financial crime.